I'd like to welcome you to the Monday version of the Thought for the Day. Good to be together. The passage today is from the book of 2 Kings in the Old Testament. And here are God's words. You shall not obey other gods, and you shall not forget the covenant that I made with you. God has made a covenant with us. And that covenant is that he will always, always love us and be with us. And that's an amazing covenant. You know, sometimes we lose sight of it, and maybe sometimes we wonder if God really is there. But God made a covenant with us since the beginning of time, that his Spirit will be with us every step of our journey. And then he says, now don't go worshiping other gods. And I was thinking to myself, I do worship other gods once in a while. They're known by different names. Sometimes I worship the God of self-centeredness. Too often I worship the God of trying to be in control. And sometimes I worship the God of my way or the highway. And that self-centeredness can so often get in the way of us really seeing God's Spirit at work. So speaking of being self-centered, which we clergy can be, you know, I think a lot of you have reminded me back in the day when kids are in church and they make noise. And some people would say, when your kids made noise, did you get that Don look? You know, it's the look like, come on, there's a nursery out there. It's interesting because in the last 2 years, a couple of you said, Don, we haven't seen the Don look for a long time. It's like yesterday in church. You know, I think, like my sermon, my words are so important that if there's any noise, I don't want any, but there are a bunch of kids in church yesterday. And especially over there in that corner. And they were making some noise. And I know the parents wanted them at least to stay for the children's sermon. And when it was time for the kids' sermon, they came up and they were noisy and they were all over the place. And I said, you know, it's just so good to hear that noise in church again. Because the kids are coming back. And they're crying and they're howling and they're all over the place for the children's sermon. And somebody after church said, Don, that was the best, most disorganized children's sermon you've ever done. Because there was energy and there was noise and there was joy. Because too often I put myself first and forget to listen to the heartbeat and the joy of others. You know, this week, the theme is going to be, we never forget. It's interesting because sometimes I'll walk into Charter Hall and I'll forget why I went there. And I'm sure you've all had times when you've had something on your schedule and the day goes about and then you look back and say, oh my gosh, I forgot to do that. I forgot to be there. We always forget sometimes. But when it comes to the important stuff, the people who have gone before us, we try never to forget. A little thing that brought back a lot of memories for me, I haven't talked about Adam for a long time, but the other day I dropped a couple things. And I sometimes have trouble picking things up off the floor with my hand. They just don't work like they used to. And I got frustrated. And then this morning, as I was thinking about we never forget, I looked at Adam's picture on my wall. Adam's been gone a long time. And I got frustrated because I couldn't pick something up. And I remember Adam the first time he came to church, and I wondered why when he ran with a limp. And then I wondered why one day he came to church and he had a walker. Then I wondered why when he came to church he was in a wheelchair. And I remember as his muscular dystrophy progressed, there was a time when he was in an electric wheelchair and he really couldn't do anything for himself except speak. I remember that day when I used to take him to cross-country meets and it was snowing and it was raining and it was ugly, and I called Adam and I said, Adam, with your wheelchair and all, we're not going to be able to go to that cross-country meet. And he said, what do you mean we're not going to go? you get over here right now. And I went there, and I got him in the van, and we went to the cross-country meet, and he was muddy, and he was wet. But most importantly, he was happy. And I realized that sometimes I get frustrated with some of the things I can't do. And then I look at Adam's picture, and I realize he was so gracious in letting other people do things for him, because that was his way of hanging on to his dignity and his spirit. And gosh, do I miss that young man. I remember one time, and I used to talk about Adam all the time. One time, somebody came into my office, and he said, "You know, Don, you're talking about Adam too much." And I said, "Well, then you better find another church, because that ain't going to stop." Because it's amazing what we remember. I'm sure there are people in your lives, when you look back and you think of their spirit, you think of what they went through, you think of what they meant to you, and it's too easy to forget. It's too easy to let those other gods get in the way, those gods of putting yourself first and being self-centered and being too busy. And then something happens, and all of a sudden, life is put in perspective. Maybe not being able to pick something up off the floor, and you think of a young man that could hardly even move himself. You think of wanting it to be nice and quiet in church so everybody can hear your sermon. And then you hear a child cry and a child laugh, and you're just thankful for the energy they bring into our church. It's been an incredible 2 years, and I'm not sure when this whole thing is going to stop. But one thing it has done, it has put life in perspective. And those little ordinary moments, those people who have gone before, they've taught us not to forget the power of remembering those who bring so much into our lives. And each one of you bring a lot into my life. And so this week, we will not forget. We'll remember and celebrate the gift of the human spirit and that covenant that God makes with each one of us. God bless you. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you on Wednesday. Happy Monday. Thank you, Doug.